I'm going to start off with a quick apology. Not everything you know about level design is wrong, but I couldn't really call my speech. Some of the things you know about level design might not be right. So, so what I want to do is provide you with something different, something a little more lighthearted, something to break you out of your post-lunch coma. I will be asking questions. The purpose of this kind of little spiel is to encourage discussion and debate and to get you guys all thinking about the process of level design. I thought it would be a good idea for us to get to know each other better. Dave gave me a very nice introduction. My name is Dan Taylor. I've been in the video game industry for 15 years on both publishing and development side, so I've seen both sides of the fence. Who here in the audience is a level designer? Okay, that's pretty cool. I'm going to upset you guys the least. Is there anyone here who's an artist? Okay, I'm going to upset you a little bit more, sorry. Are there any producers in the audience? Oh, bollocks. Yeah, I'm going to upset you a lot, sorry. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by reviewing some of the theories of modern level design. And then I'm going to talk a bit about a broader design theory that we could perhaps apply to the way that we make levels. And I'm going to talk about the conventions or tropes in level design and how we can subvert them to create more memorable gameplay. And this includes the convention not just on what a level is, but on who makes them and how one goes about doing it. I'm going to start off with a little talk on classic level design. So there isn't really any great body of work regarding level design. There's lots on game design in general, but nothing specific on level design. So I put together my own kind of school of thought on the subject, and it was basically the fundamentals of modern level design. So it's using kind of borrowing from dramatic structure that was put in place by chaps like Aristotle and Plato. Using psychometrics to pace your level, using mise-en-scene to create a visual narrative within your level, and controlling progression through the use of rational gameplay metrics. Now, when I started at Ubisoft, Ubisoft make all of their games using this design theory called rational game design. And what that does is it breaks the game down into a series of macro elements. So, for example, the time something is on screen, the size it takes up on the screen, the rhythm of the inputs, the frequency of inputs. And that creates a really good common language for making games. But it creates games that feel kind of very robotic, unfortunately. But what I thought you might be able to do is to do something different, to do something unexpected to cut through the clutter. And I started to look into how we do this. And then I remembered that when I was working at Sony, I had the pleasure to work with an advertising agency called TBWA. This is one of their adverts for the PSP. TBWA is a big agency. It's 11,000 people across 274 offices in 100 companies. It's very big. Its clients include small companies like McDonald's and Apple and Sony PlayStation. And they base all of their creative work on a theory from their worldwide CEO, Jean-Marie Drew, called the theory of disruption. So I'd like to talk about disruption theory because it's a design theory that I can really get behind. The basic principle of it is very simple. To employ disruption theory, you identify the conventions surrounding your project, and then you disrupt them to create a vision. So disruption, it sounds like it could have quite negative connotations, but that's not actually the case. It's about asking better questions and challenging conventional wisdom and overturning assumptions. And it creates communication that really stands out from a sea of clutter, like this PSP ad. So if you look at this, the obvious tack to take if you're trying to advertise a PSP would be to talk about the graphics and the portability and all the fun games. This is a disruption theory advert. It doesn't do any of that. What it does is it takes teenage boys' kind of weird, freakish love of gaming and creates this kind of pseudo-sexual image of the gamer and his PSP. Is it memorable? I think so. And this is kind of the crux of this presentation, to apply disruption theory to level design to create equally memorable levels. So let's have a look at the conventional wisdom. So the first and most basic conception is that a level is a location, or at least a metaphysical space. Now, Vancouver is a space. This theatre is a space. The chairs you're sitting in a space, but I think that a level is actually a medium. And more precisely, I like to design a game level as the metaphysical medium through which your game delivers the gameplay. So what does that mean? There are three elements to a painting. There's the subject, composition, and then there's the medium. So the subject is what you're painting, the composition is how you're painting it, and the medium is what you're painting it with. So how does this translate into gameplay? The subject, I believe, is your gameplay mechanics. So locomotion, combat, any exotic gameplay, stuff like that. The composition is actually that's the metaphysical element, so all the art and the location of your level. And then the medium is the actual level itself. So the medium is the level is what you use to deliver your gameplay. It's your oil paint and your canvas for painting your gameplay picture. And seeing your level as a medium, I think, is the first step to creating a quality experience that is gameplay driven. The next misconception is that a level tells a story. This one is kind of true. So yes and no to this one. Almost every level has narrative elements. But I'd just like to ask you, who do you guys think is the narrator? Anyone? Correct. The narrator is the player. So I think there are three types of narrative in action in every level. First of all, there's the explicit narrative. Now that is the story that is told to the player by the game. So your cutscenes, your mission objectives, any dialogue, that kind of thing. That's explicit. Clearly that's narrative that's in place. The next layer of narrative is implicit narrative. Implicit narrative is the stuff that is implied to the player through the things that he sees. So anything that's he sees in the level that's kind of mise en scene. And just to elaborate on what that means, it's a technique used in stage to place objects on the stage that also tell the story. And so my favorite example of this is, are you guys familiar with a graphic novel called The Watchmen? Yes. Good, good. Okay. So if you look at The Watchmen, at the comedian's apartment in The Watchmen, and this translates very nicely into the movie as well, you'll see all sorts of little detail around his apartment that really tell you more about this character. So you see the gun above his fireplace, you'll see the ashtray full of cigars, and you start to get a little idea of the backstory of this character. So that's the mise en scene, the implicit narrative. And the final narrative element is emergent narrative. And this is really the little story that the player makes up in his head as he goes along. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, how do I write a story that the player makes up? Well, the best tool for creating emergent narrative is choice. Give the player choice. So it could be choice in path, choice in the weapons, choice in the gameplay. Games that do this very well, Skyrim, Deus Ex, let the players set their own objectives. So you can use stealth, you can use combat, you can use magic, and this really lets the player tell a story and really comes back to the level being a medium through which you deliver your gameplay. For example, in Medal of Honor, every time you've got a high vantage point above the Nazis, there'd always mysteriously be a big box of grenades, which would give the player the chance to write his own little story about being some grenade-chucking nutcase, which is quite nice. And similarly, there'd always be a shotgun propped up against the doorway to a series of narrow corridors with lots of enemies about to jump out. So you can kind of direct the emergent narrative with little tricks like this. And that kind of gameplay that's driven by discovery rather than drudgery is really important for creating little eureka moments because it's a proven fact that discovery and eureka moments create endorphin, and endorphin relates to fun. So that's why it's important to have all three layers of narrative in your level. The next misconception I'd like to talk about is that a level should be coherently paced. So I've talked a little bit about classic level design. Most levels, in fact, pretty much all levels, rely on this basic Aristotelian pacing, which has been around since the days of ancient Greece. So you've got your stakes or intensity or difficulty or whatever you want versus time. And as you progress through the level, it'll kind of get difficult, and there'll be a little rest, so the players don't desensitize to all the crazy action. They get more difficult, there'll be another little rest, That'll be more difficult. So kind of roller coastering, as it was described earlier. And that's great. That's a really great way to make solid levels, but it's also a little predictable. So good examples of breaking this trend of Aristotelian pacing are the opening of Half-Life 1, for example, where the first 15 minutes of the game is you taking the train to work. And by the time you actually get to the experimental chamber, you so know, you have this phenomenal feeling of dread that something is about to go wrong, that when it does actually happen, it's very intense. And similarly, my favorite example of this in a more recent game is in Dead Space 2, which is where this picture is from. Has everyone played Dead Space 2? Yeah, you should, it's awesome. In Dead Space 2, I'm going to spoil a big chunk of the game for everyone who hasn't played it. I do apologise. So in Dead Space 2, about halfway through the game, you get to go back to the USS Ishimura, which is the spaceship from the first game. And for about 10 minutes of this level, nothing happens. And you just get more and more frightened by nothing happening, because you know that any moment now something is going to come out of the cupboard next to you, but it still doesn't happen. And about 15 minutes into the game, you come across this huge central transport chamber through the middle of the ship. And you're like, oh, open space, I don't like this. And lo and behold, this massive, great big monster comes out of the ceiling and attacks you. And the feeling of panic is quite palpable. Well, it is for me anyway, because I'm a bit of a chicken. But my friend is the producer on that level. And when I found this out, I had to ask him. I said, man, how did you do that suspense? What did you kind of do lots of testing, kind of psychometric profiling? Did you do lots of research into horror movies and how long you could sustain it for? And he went, no, Dan. The creative director said, we've got this new big monster, and we want you to showcase it in the level, and it's got to be the first monster you find. And we were using the old Ishimura levels from Dead Space 1, and that was the first place we could actually physically fit it into the level. I was like, oh, OK. Well, it worked well. Yeah, so again, he was kind of forced to think outside the box and do something different, and I think it worked really well. And it's a great example of how you can disrupt conventional thinking to create something that's very memorable. What that area of Dead Space also did was disrupt the pattern of the gameplay. And one of the misconceptions is that a level should teach patterns. Now, there's a great book on the subject of game design called A Theory of Fun by Rafe Koster. Has anyone read it? You should read it, it's good. And he says that the human mind enjoys processing information from the world around it into patterns so it can use it again at a later date. He then goes on to say that games primarily feature a core pattern and mechanic which players learn via playing the game. And this is fun for the mind to process these patterns. And he also, the final point that he makes is that if players understand a pattern and master it too easily, they'll quickly become bored and stop playing. And I think this is also true if the pattern is repeated too often. Players will desensitize to it. So it's my belief that a game should teach a pattern, but then break it for dramatic effect. And we kind of tried to do this to a certain extent with the gameplay in motion sports adrenaline on the kayak section of it, the little kayak game. So we have these whirlpools. We have these whirlpools where if you drive your kayak into the whirlpool, row. If you row your kayak into the whirlpool, you have to do a pose. And if you do the correct pose, lots of coins pop up. If you do the incorrect pose, you get sucked in underwater and spat out somewhere else. Now, that's how every whirlpool in the level works, apart from one of them, which is right by a walled-off area of the river with loads and loads and loads of gold coins in it. And the whirlpool has a very easy pose to do, so it's very easy to get out of. But when you do it, clever players will notice that there's no reward for doing it. So, there's no reward for doing this whirlpool. There are all these gold coins over there. If only I could get sucked under the water and spat out near them. How am I going to... Oh, wait a minute. And then that challenged them to think, and challenged them to break the pattern. And it actually, playtested very positively. We had a lot of positive response on that. OK, so the next misconception, or I believe it to be a misconception, is that a level should be logical. Now, everybody knows Mr. Spock. He's super logical. But you wouldn't really take him to a party. He's not a lot of fun. And this kind of indicates kind of the fault in a level that's totally logical. A lot of the time, producers will ask me why certain things happen in my level. They'll go, Dan, why do those trees fall over? Why does that boat get blown up? Why is there a gunfight in the middle of the highway? To which I replied, why not? And they said, Dan, that's not an answer. I said, yes, it is an answer. You just don't like it. I'm not saying your level should be full of like unicorns shooting rainbows out of their horns. Everything should still be plausible. A great example of this is the TV show Lost. Why is there a smoke monster on the island? How do they move the island? Who cares? It's cool. Random gameplay adds replayability, and it provides individual players with an experience that is unique to them. And more importantly, it adds surprise. So my favourite example of this is the original Aliens vs Predator game on PC, where if you died and reloaded your game, all of the alien spawn points were random. So you'd never know where the aliens were coming from. And that kind of element of randomness was crucial for Aliens vs Predator in maintaining suspense. The next thing I want to talk about is navigability. A level should be easy to navigate. Can anyone tell me what's in that picture? A maze, correct. Are mazes easy to navigate? No, they are not. What our mazes are is fun to navigate. And this is what I think a level should be, fun to navigate. For example, Modern Warfare 2, the favela level. Very difficult to work out where you're supposed to go, but extremely intense. You've got enemy fire coming from all directions, multiple levels of gameplay, and it really does feel like you're fighting for your life through quite a hostile environment. And once you stop seeing your level as a linear path and start to see them as a series of modular encounters, that frees up your thinking to create a much more enjoyable process. There's a veteran video game designer called Mark Cerny, who's the creator of a game called Marble Madness, and he does a lot of consultancy work for Sony. And he's got the special method of game development, and he says that players should be free to choose from a series of objectives, each objective providing a reward that makes the next objective easier or more fun. So now I'm going to look at the people and the processes used to create levels. We've talked about some of the misconceptions about what levels are. Now I'd like to go a bit more into the process. Borrowing from other games is okay. No, it is not. The artist Pablo Picasso is quoted as saying, "Talent borrows, genius steals." This is a great quote, which he actually stole from Oscar Wilde. And what I mean when I say steal is that you take the original inspiration, you take the concept, and you make it your own by doing it better or subverting it. So when I was working with Guerrilla on Killzone, one of the segments of their level was based on the Normandy beach landing from Medal of Honor. And what they did is they said, we want to take that, we want to flip it. So you're in the machine guns, and that you've got this constant swarm of soldiers coming out. And by subverting that, they created an experience that was based on something, but sufficiently different for it to be original and unique. Has anyone heard of a game called Kill.Switch? Yeah, well done. Okay, so Kill.Switch, it's a great little game on PlayStation 2, and it introduced the cover-based shooting mechanic, which Gears of War stole. And nobody remembers Kill.Switch because Gears of War took that concept and put it in such a polished experience that they completely stole it. And again, Medal of Honor, the most recent Medal of Honor, they tried to steal from Modern Warfare or Call of Duty and modernise Medal of Honor into a modern theatre of war. They didn't really own it, and you could tell that it felt like a poor man's copy of Call of Duty, which I was quite upset about. Has anyone seen a TV show called Charlie Brooker's Gameswipe? Yeah. Yes, again, you should see that. It's quite good. On Gameswipe, there's a screenwriter called Graham Lynham, who he writes Father Ted, Little Britain, the IT Crowd, and they interview him about his take on video gaming. And he says the problem is the quality of research. You can see that everyone in a video game studio who's making a game, they've just sat around and watched Scarface and gone, oh yeah, let's put all these bits of the game in. And he says that whereas screenwriters and movie authors and book authors, they'll actually go to the location, they'll do proper research, and that gives them a much more rounded experience to create. So what I'm saying is really you should be very careful about where you choose your reference. And one of the things that we did on Motion Sports Adrenaline was a kite surfing game. And the lead designer on that, he wanted to mimic the gameplay a PlayStation 3 title called Wakeboarding HD. And I just thought, oh, are we really using a 63% Metacritic game as our best example, with the thing that we really want to copy? And unfortunately, one of the reviewers actually called us out. It's like, this is like a bad copy of Wakeboarding HD, which wasn't very good in the first place. Like, oh. So yeah, do be careful about your reference material. And there seems to be this kind of reluctancy to hack stuff from production of video games. And they say that hacks are bad. And my question to you guys is, and this is a rhetorical question, you don't have to answer. My question for you guys is, who's going to know you hacked it? Certainly not the player. Maybe your software engineer, your coder, or the artist, they'll know you hacked it, but the player won't. And as a level designer, it is your job to push the game engine to its limits, all right? To try and break it if you can. Because this exposes your engine's flaws. And it gives you an idea of things that you need to fix, of features that are missing in the game, things that you can talk to your software engineers about and say, hey, I tried to do this using this hack. It didn't work. Can you make it better, please? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, OK. Most engineers would be quite happy. 2 weeks before we were supposed to go gold, we were asked to put a rail shooter into Medal of Honor Heroes 2, because it was for the casual audience on Wii, man. And so we actually had to create this entire game mode by hacking together bits of the AI code. And as the kind of lead level designer on it, I created this system where if you shoot certain Nazis or certain objects in the level, you do something, your path will split, so you can take alternative paths through this rail shooter. And this was all cobbled together through AI pathing code, triggers, and the very, very rudimentary scripting system we had. But it worked really well, and to such an extent that the rail shooter in Medal of Honor was really well received. The Natural History Museum in London. This is going to help me explain how getting your core gameplay into the level first is not necessarily the best thing to do. Now, this building was created by a 19th century architect called Alfred Waterhouse. And he really wanted to make a building that would be classic, would stand the test of time. So he got on Twitter to his friend Sir Christopher Wren, who'd been dead for 100 years, and said, Christopher Wren, you did a great job on St. Paul's Cathedral. What's your secret? And Christopher Wren said, well, what you've got to do is take all the nice things on your building, all the decorative arches, all the gargoyles, all the nice frilly windows, and build them first. Build them first, stick them in a warehouse while you get on with the rest of the project. Because 75% into the project, your client is going to come to you and say, hang on a second, I think we need to reduce the budget a little bit. Is there anything we can cut? Maybe all that frilly stuff. To which you can then say, well, I've already made all the frilly stuff already. It's sitting in a warehouse. We've got to use it. And your client will go, oh, well, what else can we cut? How about an entire wing? So they cut an entire wing of this building, leaving this massive open space, which is now where the new entomology wing stands. And so how does this relate to level design? Well, your producer will not cut core gameplay. What he will cut is all the flaky stuff that might be awesome, but you won't know until you've proven it out and tested it. So one of the first things I like to drop into my levels is an example of exotic gameplay. So in Motion Sports Adrenaline, it was kind of the secret alternative routes through the levels that involved animated obstacles, triggers, and scripting. It's kind of a high-risk design. And I'm pretty confident that if I hadn't put that in the initial grey boxing phase, it never would have made it into the game. And this was kind of proven when we outsourced some of the level design to another company. And the last thing that went into their game was the big finale of the levels. And they were very ambitious, really unproven. They only had a very small window to get it right, so the finales all got axed in every single level that they did, which was a big shame. So, getting your core gameplay in first, yes, maybe, but also make sure you've got some of the exotic stuff. So, next up. Artists, I can't get upset. Trust your artists. Now, I love artists. They're all crazy and highly entertaining. But they're very, 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 very good at one thing, and that's making stuff look good. If they have a choice between making something look good and making it play good, they'll choose the former. And you can't really hold it against them because that is their job. Sometimes they'll also think they know more about level design than you do. I had an artist come to me and go, hey Dan, I play an awful lot of video games. I think I know what makes good game design. And I was like, well, I've looked at a lot of paintings, but that doesn't necessarily make me an artist. They're also a scarce resource. So the arts portion of a game is always a big chunk of the production time. And you can find yourself in a situation where your art capacity is driving your gameplay. It's dictating what you can and cannot do. For example, on Medal of Honor, the art director came to me and he goes, Dan, those doors in your level, you can only have one door per level. I was like, what, one door? What do you mean? He goes, well, we have to bake the shadow map into each individual door texture. So we've only got time to do one per level. And I had to go to the producers and go, well, this stops us from gating the player, it stops us from spawning Nazis in certain locations. And once we discussed it, we've gone back and forth. The art team managed to find a slightly more efficient way of doing it. So what I'm saying is that if your art capacity is driving your gameplay, make sure you can come up with a way to get around it and talk to your producer, because that is how you end up with a game. An 83% rating for graphics and a 63% rating for gameplay, which is always embarrassing for the game designers. And the other thing is you need to make sure that your artists are educated. So Medal of Honor had this great cover system whereby when you duck, you are nicely covered. And when you go into Iron Sights mode when you're ducked, you pop up about that much in real-world space over the whatever cover you're in. So we had a dock level. There were lots of crates. We used the cover mechanics really well. Until one of the artists was looking at the level and went, crates. There's something wrong with those crates. Yeah, who just puts crates there? I'm going to put them all on pallets. So he put all of the crates in the entire level on these lovely-looking pallets and broke the entire cover mechanic for that level. And by the time we'd found out, it was too late for him to go back and change it. So you need to make sure your artists are educated. So you need to make sure you've got a wiki with all the spatial metrics for your game. Make sure they've read it, take them through it. And it's my belief that the environment artists should actually be part of the level design team. They should sit next to each other. They should be involved in the early stages of the level design. So you're really invested. So now that I've upset the artists, I'm going to upset the producers. In fact, producers, cover your ears, because if producers know this next bit, it doesn't work for the level designers. And that's that always giving accurate time estimates is not good. Look at the look on Scotty's face. He doesn't agree. So imagine the scene, Star Trek Enterprise. It's just been in a battle with a Klingon bird of prey, and it's damaged. The warp drives are offline, and Kirk gets on the view screen to Scotty, and he goes, Scotty, I need warp drive functional in 2 hours. And Scotty goes, it's bypassed like the lights on the Christmas tree, Captain. It's going to take at least 6. And Captain Kirk goes, we'll be dead in 6 hours. I need it in 2 hours. Scotty's like, I'll see what I can do, but I can't promise anything. And Scotty knows it'll only take him 20 minutes to fix the warp drive. So he goes down to engineering, he fixes the warp drive, makes himself a nice cup of tea, and an hour later, he gets on the view screen to Captain Kirk and he goes, Captain, I've got the warp drive working. And Captain Kirk goes, Scotty, you're a miracle worker. And that's how it's done, because on the other end, the producers will be doing the reverse of that. So you'll say to them, yes, it will take me 3 weeks to grey box this level. And they're like, he's probably adding an extra week onto that. How about 2 weeks? And like, okay, this is why this is bad for producers to know this. And it's not being dishonest. It's just good planning, because that extra time will allow you to put more polish on your levels, and that's how you get quality. And if anyone calls you out on it, you can just say that you've built a healthy amount of fat into your schedule for any unforeseen cock-ups. And basically the whole principle is that you should always overpromise and underdeliver. It's just good project planning. My final slide before I wrap up is about level designers themselves. So do any of you guys recognize this fellow? Yeah, it's Prince. So Prince writes, produces, and plays all of the instruments on his tracks, and he self-publishes. He takes all of the elements of his music and fuses them together into an extremely high-quality package, which is why I don't really agree when people say that level designers are specialists. A level designer is a generalist. He needs to know how to tell a story. He needs to know how to write good dialogue. He needs to know how architecture works. He needs to know about visual composition, how to code, how to animate, and have a really good grasp of gameplay mechanics. And a good level designer should have this broad skill set that encompasses visual, narrative, architectural, and programming skills. And because the level designer is the guy who, like Prince, pulls all of these elements of your experience together and executes the engineer's gameplay. He briefs the art. He delivers a narrative experience. He needs to be good at all of those things to produce a level of high quality. I want to leave you with a positive takeout, because not everything you know is wrong. It's okay. This fellow is one of my design heroes. It's a chap called James Dyson. Sorry, Sir James Dyson, because the advice that I'm about to give you that he followed got him a knighthood, so it's kind of important. He says that young people need the confidence to be inventive and the support to be bold. And he goes on to say that at school you're not allowed to fail because failing is seen as a bad thing. But all failures are very valuable because they all teach you something. So when he made his bagless vacuum cleaner, I'm assuming you're all familiar with the Dyson vacuums. So he made 5,162 prototypes before he got a design that worked. And this took him ages to do. Him and his wife were living off one salary, her school teacher's salary. It nearly bankrupted him, and nobody would buy his design because they all wanted to sell bags. So he started his own company to make this idea. Not out of arrogance, but because he genuinely believed that his idea was different and that there was a market for it. And now Dyson vacuum cleaners are the world leader of vacuum cleaners, the world market leader. He actually employs inexperienced people in his company because he thinks that they're more likely to take risks and do crazy experiments. And have you seen the air blade hand dryers that Dyson make? Designed completely by accident. They were doing a project with compressed air and water jets, and he won't say what it is because it hasn't been released, but one of the engineers got his hands wet, so he stuck his hands in the airstream to clean them, and everyone just went, and now these air blades are everywhere because they use 80% less energy than conventional dryers. So what was it that James Dyson did that was so awesome? Well, he innovated, he was different, and he believed in his idea. And I think that if you can be different and have the courage to trust in your idea and your own judgment, then that's a good starting point to making everything you know about level design be right. Thank you very much.